Update. Proceedings of the 16th session of the sham trial of Dr. Riek Machar and 7 other detainees from the SPLM/AJO. October 31st, 2025. Today, the so-called special court on the Nasir incident held its 16th session at Freedom Hall in Juba, continuing the politically motivated trial initiated by the SPLM-IG against First Vice President Dr. Riek Machar, Tini Durgan, and other senior members of the SPLM/AJO. During today's session, the defense further exposed substantive, procedural, and administrative violations that have marred the proceedings from the outset. These violations include, but are not limited to, the unlawful house arrest of First Vice President Dr. Riek Machar was authorized by the Internal Security Bureau of the National Security Service, ISBNSS, in a letter dated March 26, 2025, addressed to President Salva Kiir Mayardit. The letter sought approval for Dr. Machar's arrest, which the president granted on the same date, without lifting the first vice president's immunity, which requires the approval of 2/3 of the Transitional National Legislative Assembly, TNLA, as required under South Sudanese law. The arrest and detention of the Minister of Petroleum, Honorable Pute Kong Cole, were carried out by the National Security Service, NSS, without prior lifting of his immunity by the National Council of Ministers. The arrest and detention of Transitional National Legislative Assembly, TNLA, member Honorable Gatwech Lam Puch were executed by the NSS without prior lifting of his immunity by the TNLA. The arrest and detention of the acting chief of staff of the SPLA-IO, who also serves as co-chair of the Joint Defense Board, JDB, and Deputy Chief of Defense Forces of the SSPDF, Lieutenant General Gabriel Dope Lam, were authorized solely via verbal instruction from General Dr. Paul Nong Majok, Chief of Defense Forces of the SSPDF, without adherence to due administrative process. The arrest and detention of Brigadier General Camilo Gat Michael and Lieutenant Mating Riek Yak were conducted without adherence to due administrative process. During cross-examination of the lead investigator, Major General Basilio Thomas Wani, the defense challenged the legality of the investigation committee's formation, a key pillar of the prosecution's case. Specifically, they questioned whether members, including the head, had taken the mandated oath before commencing their work. After the lead investigator confirmed they had not, the defense argued that this failure invalidated the legal standing of the investigation's findings. The defense further questioned the lead investigator regarding the evidence linking the first vice president and the 7 SPLM/AIO members to Mr. Torgile Thoen, the new armed youth, aka the White Army leader, who the prosecution accused of leading the attack on the SSPDF garrison of Wichiradu in Nasir in March 2025 and died during the attack. The lead investigator explicitly denied possessing any evidence connecting the accused to the deceased White Army leader. Additionally, the defense posed a critical question to the investigator concerning the statement of the first accused, Honorable Pute Kong Cole, the Minister of Petroleum, which the prosecution had labeled as misleading public opinion regarding the Nasir incident. The question was as follows: did the first accused, Pute Kong Cole, address the public spontaneously, or was his statement on Radio Mariah made in response to a question posed by the interviewer? The investigator testified that Honorable Pute Kong Cole had not spoken of his own volition but had responded to a question during a live Radio Mariah talk show. He further acknowledged that Pute Kong was not addressing the White Army or any military formation, but was speaking within the confines of a media interview. Moreover, the lead investigator conceded that the forces moving toward Nasir County at the time were unilateral SPLM-IG forces, not unified forces, corroborating the substance of Honorable Pute Kang's statement on air. These testimonies constitute a crucial element that refutes the charge of misleading or incitement, as Honorable Pute Kong spoke within a legitimate media context and responded to a journalistic inquiry. He did not direct his discourse to any military or operational entity, but rather based it on factual field findings confirmed by the investigator himself. The presiding judge of the sham court, James Alala Deng, adjourned today's session to Monday, November 3, 2025. The SPLM/AIO reiterates its rejection of the so-called special court, which it views as a mechanism created to abrogate the revitalized agreement and to conduct a political witch hunt against Dr. Riek Machar, Tini Durgan, and the SPLM/AIO. Consequently, it calls for the immediate and unconditional release of Dr. Riek Machar, Tini Durgan, and all SPLM/AIO detainees. Defense lawyers in the high-profile trial of suspended First Vice President Riek Machar and 7 co-accused launched a vigorous challenge on Friday, questioning the legality of their clients' arrests and the admissibility of key prosecution evidence as South Sudan's special court continued cross-examination of the lead investigator. The 16th session of the trial, held at Freedom Hall in Juba, revealed that several defendants were allegedly arrested without warrants, that one serving minister and a sitting lawmaker were detained despite parliamentary immunity, and that some prosecution documents were dated after the case had already been referred to the court. Machar, 73, a pivotal figure in South Sudan's decade-long political and military upheaval, and his co-defendants face charges of mass murder, treason, terrorism, crimes against humanity, and destruction of public and military property. The charges stem from a March 2025 attack on a government military base in Nasir, Upper Nile State, in which prosecutors allege that more than 200 soldiers were killed by forces loyal to Machar's SPLAO faction and a local militia known as the White Army. The co-defendants are Pute Kong Chul, 40, Mam Pal Duer, 37, Gatwech Lam Puch, 66, Lieutenant General Gabriel Dup Lam, 53, Camilo Gat Michael, 47, Mating Yak Riek, 45, and Dominic Gatgok Riek, 27. Machar, a signatory to the 2018 peace agreement, was placed under house arrest on March 26, while his associates were detained by security personnel on various dates during the same month. No cabinet authorization. Under cross-examination, lead investigator Major General Basilio Thomas Wani admitted that the arrests of the defendants were not authorized by the Council of Ministers, as required under South Sudanese law. When asked whether the cabinet had approved the operation, Wani replied, "I was unaware of any authorization." Under cross-examination, lead investigator Major General Basilio Thomas Wani admitted that the arrests of the defendants were not authorized by the Council of Ministers, as required under South Sudanese law. When asked whether the cabinet had approved the operation, Wani replied, "I was unaware of any authorization." The court heard that a lawmaker, identified as the third defendant, was arrested by the National Security Service without a warrant while still protected by parliamentary immunity. Wani added that the first, second, and third defendants were all detained without warrants, while the arrests of the fourth and sixth accused were carried out under verbal orders from the Chief of Defense Forces, with no written documentation presented to the court. Evidence challenged. Defense counsel also raised concerns over procedural irregularities in the handling of prosecution evidence. Lawyers pointed to a key document marked 13 out of 11, dated September 14, after the case had already been referred to the court. Wani explained that the application had been sent earlier to the National Communication Authority, NCA, but was only signed after the investigation team had been constituted. The defense also questioned the chain of custody for the evidence, to which Wani admitted that some case files remained with the investigation committee even after the case had been transferred to the special court, a lapse that, defense lawyers argued, undermined the integrity of the prosecution's submissions. A major point of contention centered on a Radio Mariah interview allegedly given by the first accused, Pute Kong Chul, which prosecutors claimed contained remarks linked to the Nasir attack. The defense maintained that the program was a political talk show, not a security briefing, as alleged by the prosecution. Wani testified that he had listened to the recording, which circulated on social media, but could not recall the broadcast date or the other participants, who defense lawyers said included Cabinet Affairs Minister Martinelli Alamuro, former RJMEC Interim Chair Charles Tai Jichui, and other officials. He said the National Communication Authority had reviewed the clip and deemed it misleading regarding the Nasir incident, but admitted the media authority, the official media regulator, had never reviewed its content. The recording was submitted to the court on a USB flash drive. Investigation committee questioned. In a further challenge to the prosecution's case, the defense questioned whether the investigation committee was properly constituted in accordance with the law. Defense counsel asked whether the committee members, including its head, had taken the required oath before commencing their duties. Wani confirmed that they had not, prompting the defense to argue that this omission undermined the legal validity of the investigation's findings. Regarding the arrest of Machar, Wani testified that President Salva Kiir Mayardit had verbally authorized the operation but acknowledged that no written directive existed at the time. He confirmed that a formal letter lifting Machar's immunity was issued several months after his arrest and interrogation, a timeline the defense argued proved the detention was unlawful. Investigation committee questioned. In a further challenge to the prosecution's case, the defense questioned whether the investigation committee was properly constituted in accordance with the law. Defense counsel asked whether the committee members, including its head, had taken the required oath before commencing their duties. Wani confirmed that they had not, prompting the defense to argue that this omission undermined the legal validity of the investigation's findings. Regarding the arrest of Machar, Wani testified that President Salva Kiir Mayardit had verbally authorized the operation but acknowledged that no written directive existed at the time. He confirmed that a formal letter lifting Machar's immunity was issued several months after his arrest and interrogation. A timeline the defense argued proved the detention was unlawful. Addressing the core of the Nasir incident, Wani testified that one of the accused had provided misleading information, claiming that the advancing troops were not SPLA forces but militias. However, when asked whether any of the accused had explicitly mentioned or given instructions to the White Army, Wani replied, "There are no direct instructions," adding, he didn't mention anything directed to the White Army. Court adjourns to November 3, 2025. The defense also renewed several pending applications, including requests for access to evidence, medical leave for certain defendants, and translation assistance for non-English speakers. Presiding Judge James Alala Deng sustained a prosecution objection, instructing the defense to limit questioning to documents the investigator could directly identify, focusing on their form rather than their content. After a lengthy session, Judge Deng adjourned proceedings to Monday, November 3, 2025, for continuation of the defense's cross-examination and consideration of outstanding motions.
Mala na diliang godel, hechala na tagalanko la na linkenais. Dartan go ne bene kan non yeka watot kalal teje to pan ka chan den dawda kel kapayen warin walian ron kinrang rawde jandaro de dej and look pan ajendu kan wal bakelian ke janta ajenong kwarne Dr. Machar kan na dambaro den chaga yen kel ajenong den walok and wal bakelian kai katte dia le chalat kwa go walok agone obene ka temye ka watti chek ko ne dia lan chat to ka wani sajeling gone wadune ka temye ka watot ko de enta galeng ten ho muchira da lara pan ate cha kamnel pan ke te chiro den lar de chang lo ga pan tin cha na trailok ata ndong kap ke lan luk la kap ke jo ka je kan tin konan cha kun pin tin gwain ka kwar na Dr. Machar ka ke te cha ti ne tan konan gang ke tin dat ke chuang kwan Dr. Machar kan ne del cha ga yen kel red kel me cha kamnel ke dua banan gwain ke honorable potkang chul ke ja cha la no katin cha ka ke cha la no potkang chul poinde te ka wa me cha kon titin channel kel ke radio kel a radio mo cha la mara fm che honorable potkang ke kon ti ka wa ke jitin te ka report te ka ti honorable potkang chul chagalat ke ja mara fm ti ja na mo cha kun pine warga kamun gwain ke potkang and mission amo a mission odolat ka pan mission aban ke chang wal bakelian chi ne to kon an chunke tilat ke chuang Dr. Machar kan ne ka dial cha yen ke la khon ga potkang chul chikan tija mo chikan loit ke goina mo chikan loit no ara ja la de ke jan warga ga me ki honorable potkang chul a chi to kam to ere de mitamente potkang chul chikan wa amara apem amantije chawa ba jimara abem pakai bagati chajimara apem chaka tijen wo te ka gwa misha honorable potkang chul cha kon mititin ka gwa misha ka pairo ka jen rona me chikan wa kon kana murai ke honorable pot control kia kene ba os ke chan alan guame tala guame sine mentitin chireda mo cha jojo no charian me kai kired me che chuang che jojo no che buade ka katai chicken lat ke ka warga gamo cha no mo cha la no namo going kai ke che to tala guame cha honorable pot control cha mentitin amara fm muda me lada re politika lada keten teke ngwa boti chicken ka gor ke kui Dr. Machar eno ka gwade da ne nin kor ke cancer gwad ni Dr. Machar gente fel ko be medicine tete ke de jambore nin kana minin ke de kuma ne SSPD up che pel ko be ke tul ko be ke kapchong ko talam be ko de kandolat chakula tijeno maladia na mona no teka wamisi Kwana Dr. Machar charai ken ne te kon to wan korten te ga medi yeningot minyo da nord kwana Dr. Machar te ram sigarai wan koron o jo ken o naga de ne ke ni ne ga che jo yo no tala minyo kana minyo da no kwana Dr. Machar te ga ram sigarai ke jan chang edan na mo cha je ga no e kait cha war ga mo cha kungola se jo yo no e kait tala loy da ke tala e beden misika ne nyoten lat ken ni jaba Chaka nyo tijeno an wude both dejambor menan ka kor ke mi nyen ke kor nyen ke de SSPD ab ke de sa Sudan ni targile te ka wa mi sha mi jiten no charai kram kel ka ne dang roti pot kanchul ke Dr. Machar ke chief of staff globla te ka wa mi charai kram tan ka ne dang dio ka tan me de yen nyo dan wo en un misala talgila me la kwar dejambor me bod dejambor charai ken ram ken kaneti ko gwamenana te ko mede yen nyo den wo en targila charai kran ke jam gwa de dan che nyo to ni chakan tala misikana loiten chabang chawal ga mo cha nyo la twele wo shi tok sa gon ka ken mo gwa te cha je ken wo ci Dr. Machar charai kanaten ladde boka ngai ke jane dialno ajan gwa de cha kwar ke general le tane kwal na kud misale general major dak me nakaya ke changen diodien ka bandara ulita me wa kwala bana gwa mo awa jan gwa ci dioje o danki ci kwana Dr. Machar charai kanaten ka lu ke chap ne no wuda mo chwa le lor anunke aneta konan wijino duno chiwa niten kene kanalan ke dejambor kwala tumni jode kwala jako baling and aneta konan la dejambor te yo bueno chara je chalat chaling duno rameu ban me bire bulat aramo banu gwara den chete kanete konde kam ke majur dak kam ga jarar ka ulit kwala nang reirenel Chede tin rami bi na benek ramu benu wada den. Chete ka te lat ka kana raje cha lat keneling. Na mo je jojo no tele kwan Dr. Machar tele tedbo a ka tai don kira da lat ka tu kore dane to kor dung nasar to vra da kaje. Trokan dial chaga lat ping chai je no kaneti gwang ni ga ke kach. Nyam chi kwar kel ka kaneti konan jaine kene de kwalok a chika dipando yere ka chika ne de kono gwen ke kono Dr. Machar ne dang baro kwan lo pan kien tin tiluk tet kedien tin la kwar lo tet ke bi dare chi kare dare chi kana karo chiram kel ke chao ke yuan chakao yoga no an luka me joje no ne tika ne ti gwen ke kai ken telemisi kana bir ke manchiro da lat kanasar duno ken gwen gene ke kai kugur ko baka yen Anta man chana goro no luko mo bejamo koan. Ara mi to ko wat ka chana goro banduk misher kana ma ba kwet ka do mi jajem. Koan na mo point de joje no boy yare tanda na cha gor geje. Ke cha wan me cha gor ai cha lo no ba lu mi seta na mo. Ba ja kwet no de ne ti de ga jaga yam ka duno anta ma en kum wala kuma sa Sudan en bot ka kwana sal pa ke ma yadit. Nada jano de ne to de ka kum ke de ka mo kurun Reite jian, oi tega der misikanolat. Duno kata andang kandu kalat keje kene nyuna dialan tanong tin gwain karan, che joja no kan dial kamuna ka kaine. Anan tami chana goro no belugo mo beja kwet. Lugo mo chana goro ba kwet no wari de chala de diyan. Wai chi diyan diongi jan wo. Nuk lam na kap ni jok lam na kap ni jok buno bangwang bete wa mi bro nyo dan wo. Araja lat kama poinde. Eka chi tok. Raja mo awa rain mi sitwo kam. Twar lok kene diyan chau ke diyan ko tije kan wo. Tiep do bo antami chata threat kwa. Weke tinu wo yoka mu kan chila na baji lat kadwar. Akuma manan la kuma sa Sudan. Anamonta mi se bay kan chana gorbalan mi se kana bejalat. Ta yoga no worko nyam lam ya kabichok be tega mi la roda. Namo a mi se roda lat ke changa pan kata dong wuluk waka wagaja. Antami sa luka kap ka je lat te ba miloni chang karau. Mukula changa diop ka pai welker. Ta lugu ma cha kapten no bajo no iten gaja. Ka kwi war gang dial en cha nong nyen goin ke dial to. Ko bukula te gwa mi kwena ke keja. Namo jan la roda antama. Ka gwi ne bono ke changa diop ka bugo no ke jan pai welker ma. Georgia bono ba mut kap kene ye jokan luk. Be Georgia no che cha luk chai bukwet. Ko elamala kwa lo poina cha dwal. Ko loko be luk be kwet ke dir. Goro barametere chuang be kam chuo. Muluno de kwano Dr. Machar kana ne dambara odin chaga yen kel. Deka kamra dul yen ga ko kan te jojen wo tele dur mi se kanulat. Na mo jana chiro de lat ke changa pan. Muluni changa jande uro kel kapai wel. Kon kinu dangrau wide jandaro ga dis. Chino da te da longa ta dun kel ga ne mi jira muken ben kajan chana lama ketu vene benten. Goro jen odiro mat kajan bona me ko di je chana lama di ja gor ke di je subscribe. Kagore jabono di je nyo kanedo ko kien ko dekan laritin tilaro dian kejan channel ma. Adekan keja kagwad dian. Kakweja machilada te dalong. Biata mal.